Good evening, everyone. It's great to be back with you again tonight. And I hope you have the material in front of you that is labeled, How Do I Talk to Someone Who's Not Sure That They Believe in God? I'm going to remind you, as we closed the lesson 2 weeks ago, of course, I appreciate so much Brother Mark filling in for me last Sunday night. But as we closed the lesson 2 weeks ago, I made you aware that I was going to make some changes in the first page of that lesson and send you an updated copy. And I did send that out to everyone. If you picked up a copy in the auditorium this morning, that also is reflected in those new studies that I put out. Now, I want to remind you that we're talking about someone who is not sure, or is absolutely sure, perhaps, that they don't believe in God. And so that person is not going to be interested in seeing information or proof from the scriptures. So there are situations in which we've got to go before that. We've got to talk to them, first of all, about the fact that God exists. And in order to move them forward, then, of course, eventually to a study of the gospel. That's our plan. And so we're looking at a number of Christian evidences. I love the study of Christian evidence. It would be great for us to do an entire series, a quarter, on Christian evidences. So this is not exhaustive in any shape or form, but I've just selected some things, and I'm sharing with you here things that I have used with other folks who are struggling with their belief in God, and I've seen these things be helpful to them, and so that's why I wanted to share it with you, because you may in fact run into folks that are not sure, and so we need to try to help them see the evidence that's all around us, evidence that Paul talks about in Romans chapter 1, that is in God's creation. And so that's what we're going to be talking about as we move forward. Now, I just want to remind you, these are some great resources. Does God Exist Ministry, Brother John Clayton, a book that I really like. I've drawn some of the material from a book by Brother Batsell Barrett Baxter, great preacher, the late Batsell Barrett Baxter. He wrote a book, I Believe Because, and it's evidences of God's existence. And then Apologetics Press is also a very, very good resource. Now, we spent a good bit of time looking at this first argument, or proof, if you would, for God. And that is, it's called the cosmological argument, basically the origins of the universe. And we looked at the fact that nothing comes from nothing. All around us, we see that. Things just don't come out of nowhere from nothing. We also talked about the laws of cause and effect. If there's an effect, there had to have been a cause. Again, it doesn't work. One does not work without the other. And then we spent some time talking about the second law of thermodynamics. The universe is expanding, which is, this law says the universe is expanding and running down, which means it had to have a beginning. And of course, we know that beginning was God. God spoke, and the universe was created. So tonight we're going to move on into the next. If I'm looking now on page 2, the back of the first page, page 2, and about a third of the way down, you'll see Roman numeral 2, design demands a designer. And so that's where we're going to pick up tonight. This is by far the largest section of this study. You may not need or may not want to use all of the material here with the person you're talking to. It may not be necessary, but I've just tried to give you a lot of good thoughts on various things that have to do with design. This argument for God, this proof of God, is often referred to as the teleological argument for God. And it begins here, and I would ask this question, and I want to ask you this question. As we look all around us, what are some examples that we can see of design? And the person I'm talking to, I would ask them that. Design is all around us. What are some examples of that? So let me open the floor. all around us, what are examples of design in the nature around us, in the world around us? Just jump in, and anybody wants to.
Yeah, I was just going to say the beautiful trees and the green grass and all the flowers that are starting to pop up.
Absolutely. And that do that year after year after year, right? The seasons change, and we know those flowers are going to come back up. The ones that are perennials are going to come back up every year because it's the cycle that was designed into nature by God. All right. Any
Right.
other examples that you might want to you could share with someone of design all around us?
Exact position of the sun, the moon, and the earth.
Yes. Absolutely. I'm going to talk about that even in more details in a few moments, but absolutely. Absolutely. The position of in our solar system of the sun, the moon, Earth has to be exactly in the right place in order for life to exist. Absolutely.
Yes, to kind of piggyback on what y'all both just said, if we was any closer to the sun, we'd burn up.
Absolutely.
If we was further away from the sun, the whole earth would freeze, and I'm not
Yes.
just saying winter, so
Right. And
absolutely.
it's just tiny, tiny bit. I mean, it's just the very slightest shift, and the world can't exist. The life can't exist. Absolutely.
Hey,
Absolutely.
Brother Rayford,
Yes. Yes.
Brother Walker. So sometimes, being I'm an engineer, you engineers have a tendency to be very arrogant about, they built this car, they built, this, things out of wood and so forth. And so one of the things, there's an ongoing joke where, God is basically telling them, okay, well, let's have a competition
Yes.
in building something. And then God turns around and tell them, well, get your own materials.
Right.
So, there's no way in the world that, man can build something without material which God has made.
Absolutely. And I've heard that before. That is a very good, that's actually, I think, a good story to share. Yeah. Yeah. So created out of nothing, because that's exactly what God did. So there's design everywhere we look. And that's what I think makes this a powerful argument for people or a powerful proof for people as they think about the design that is everywhere. Um, that, as Charlie mentioned, the flowers and plant life on land, everything in the oceans, the designs of birds. It's just incredible when you study birds and how they fly and all of those things. There is complexity all around us. Complex design that demands a designer. And this next part on number 2 under A there is there are animals and plants that depend on each other for survival, which means that they always had, since they were created, they had to have been created at the same time. Natural selection and Darwinian evolution cannot account for these because if you take one away, the other can't exist. And I think that is really incredible. And here are just 2 examples that I gave. And this is from Brother Baxter's book, I Believe Because, the yucca moth and the yucca plant. Now, I won't read all of this. It's rather detailed, but essentially, one depends on the other. And the yucca plant cannot exist without the yucca moth. Um, not just pollinating; it goes deeper than that. That if it is the only thing that makes the yucca plant able to continue to produce seeds and then other plants again. Um, you'll notice at the bottom, the plant produces a large number of seeds. Some are eaten by the larva of the moth, and some mature to perpetuate the plant. And so, again, this goes into a lot of detail of how that works. And it only works because the yucca moth does what the yucca moth was programmed, if you would, by God to do in order to perpetuate both itself and the yucca plant. Um, Similar, this is a very interesting story. I didn't go into a lot of detail here, but when the commercial fig tree, when fig trees were first brought into the United States, they weren't here originally. They were brought in here and they couldn't grow figs because they needed a special wasp. Where they did grow, this wasp was needed in order again to cross-pollinate and those things, and so they couldn't produce fruit. Only after they brought the wasp in that they could develop a commercially profitable industry. And so these two things, a plant and an animal, dependent on each other in order for either one to exist. And that only happens because God designed that into nature. And you know, when we think of any great work of art, and some have already mentioned this a little bit earlier, the most beautiful cathedrals in the world, the largest, most beautiful castles. I love the castles of Europe. Everyone would agree, even atheists would agree, that these all had a designer, but somehow the universe came in. Some would say that somehow the universe came into being by accident without a designer. And of course, those who reject God would say that. This defies logic. Let me give you an example that, again, I think people can grasp, people can understand. Across the street from us, we live in Montgomery Village, right? We live just past Golf Course Road and just down the hill. And it's called Golf Course Road because there was a golf course across the street from us. Some of you are familiar with this area, like the Simmons, will probably remember it was a long time ago since the golf course has been functioning. And so when we moved here, it was just a big forest. Well, the company bought the land and they decided to build houses there. After they cleared the land, okay, someone didn't just call up a heavy equipment company and say, would you send 12 bulldozers over here and then tell the operators of those bulldozers, just move the dirt, right? No, it defies logic. No, there was, Brother Walker can speak to this. There were many engineers who spent many hours planning out. It's just been amazing to watch this. They're still moving dirt. They're still putting culverts in. They're doing all these things. And it didn't happen by accident. It happened because engineers planned this out. And then after that's all done, architects who have given much time to carefully designing the houses that are going to be built there. We see this all around us. And it doesn't make sense then that this world, and as complex as it is, as complex as we are, and we'll get to that in a few minutes, that this just happened by accident. Well, these are examples that I think folks can understand that are struggling with their belief in God. When I moved to what I'm calling page 3, at the top there of page 3, scientists estimate there are at least 18 physical laws that work in harmony for our planet to sustain complex life. That's us. Some of these include the laws of gravity, thermodynamics, conservation, mechanics, photonics, electromagnetic forces. All of these have to work together in harmony, and they do because they were designed and put into effect by a grand designer who is outside of these laws. Nothing else explains that. Consider the force that holds atoms together. Our universe is so fine-tuned that the tiny hydrogen atoms that work to convert matter into energy must give up no more and no less than 0.6 to 0.8% of their mass to create energy. And they do that because God set this in motion, that God created this situation. Now, this material that I'm sharing with you right now comes from a book by Brother John Clayton called The Source. And I think this is very powerful here, folks, that when you think about this, and I believe it was Doug that mentioned about where the sun is, the earth is, the moon. Look at these things. We can share this with folks, and it just, again, defies logic that this happened by accident. So in order for life to exist on earth, our life, plant life, and other animals' life, all of these things have to be true. And just think about this. It has to be the right kind of galaxy, and scientists know this. The right place in that galaxy. Of course, we're in the Milky Way galaxy. We have to be in exactly the right place in the Milky Way galaxy and have the right kind of star, which is our sun. We have to be the exact distance from our star, which is what Brother Kobe said a few minutes ago. No closer, no further away in order for life to exist. It has to have the proper planetary mass, that is Earth that we live on, the proper planetary spin, the proper planetary tilt, which of course creates our seasons, has comet sweeping planets, not near a black hole, has a solitary moon, possesses a magnetic field capable of shielding life. The total odds of all these things being true in one place on the earth by accident rather than with purpose and design by God is 1 in, and I don't know how many numbers that is. If somebody can read that for me and tell me, I know it's beyond billions and trillions, whatever the next thing is after a trillion. I have to plead ignorance. 1 in 150, whatever that number is, that all of this happened by accident. Of course, it didn't happen by accident. It happened because God created things exactly the way they needed to be in order for life to exist. Okay, let me stop for a second, catch my breath. Anyone want to add anything to this, or maybe some things that you have studied on this part of the design that you'd like to share? I'm going to take a drink. Well, I found this fascinating information about water. Whenever we send probes, and of course we've done this for sure on Mars, we've got probes on Mars right now. Whenever we send probes and robots to investigate other planets, why is it that scientists are always looking for signs that water existed? Because you can't have life without water. Water is absolutely crucial. It's not just critical, it's absolutely crucial to having life. There must be water. And here are just some of the things that I found fascinating about the properties of water that make it both extraordinary and also demanding a designer. Water is just so different than anything, just about anything else that we know of in our world. Water is colorless, odorless, it's without taste, and yet no living thing can survive without it. Plants, animals, human beings consist mostly of water. About 2/3 of the human body is water. The characteristics of water are uniquely suited to life. It has a wide margin between its boiling point and its freezing point. Water allows us to live in an environment of fluctuating temperature changes while keeping our bodies a steady 98.6 degrees. I just flipped the page, so I'm on page 4 now. Water is a universal solvent. The property of water means that various chemicals, minerals, and nutrients can be carried throughout our bodies and into the smallest blood vessels. And of course, our blood is made mostly of water. Water is also chemically neutral without affecting the makeup of the substance it carries. Water enables food, medicines, and minerals to be absorbed and used by the body. The water has another amazing property. It freezes from the top to the bottom. This is true because unlike almost everything else, water gets less dense when it freezes, whereas almost everything else gets more dense, which is why things sink, right, in water. This is why ice cubes float in a drink. When most things freeze, they get more dense. The molecules are able to pack more closely together because they start to move more slowly as they cool, making them more dense. Water is different. And then there's some kind of details here, specifics. As a body of water, like ponds, pools, I'm sorry, that should say pools instead of cools. The water molecules start slowing down, the water gets more dense and sinks, but then just before freezing solid, 4 degrees Celsius to be exact, hydrogen bonds between adjacent molecules start forming and locking in place. Now, you may not want to go into all these details with folks, but it's just an amazing thing, which it serves aquatic life very well, right? Because it freezes from the top to the bottom, which allows ice to form, but the fish in aquatic life to live. and to live well underneath the ice. Fish and crustaceans, all manner of beings can hang out under balmy, non-frozen, still liquid 40 degrees centigrade temperatures at the bottoms of ponds all winter and wait for spring to come. And so, again, it's just another example of the incredible design that God has placed in his creation, in our world. And water is one of those things. When we look at the complexity of the human body, that's just beyond incredible. I'm sure Brother Grady could give us so many examples of this, but the immense amount of intricate design on the cellular, molecular, and microbiological level cannot be explained without a designer. Again, Darwinian evolution cannot work on this level, on this micro level, but only with the designer who is outside of the creation. On the cellular level, each individual cell is such an amazing structure, and then there's details here about how the cells work. Each cell is its own unit, capable of carrying on life activities independent of others like itself. Each cell performs these activities with precision. Says, when we ask concerning a living cell, how did this microscopic but amazing functional biological machine come to have its present form? How was it set into motion? We're confronted with formidable, even insurmountable difficulties in trying to account for its being and its continued functioning apart from an intelligent mind, a creator. And I'm going to page 4 now. I'm sorry, to page 5 now. A creator that designed it all. Even scientists would never suggest that a machine this complicated and intricate could be created by man apart from careful design. And when you move to the level of microbiology, any scientist in his field worth his salt cannot hold that these things happen by accident, but only with great precision. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't some that do, but when we really look at the evidence is that this could not have happened by accident. And then we think about the brain is just such an amazing thing. And to imagine that it could have happened by accident. Looking at B here, the complexity of the connectivity between these cells is mind-boggling. Each neuron can make contact with thousands or even tens of thousands of others via tiny structures called synapses. Our brains form 1 million new connections for every second of our lives. The pattern and strength of the connections is constantly changing, and no two brains are alike. So we just look at ourselves. We look at think about the symmetry of our bodies. And it just cries out for a designer and a creator. Okay, so
Rayford?
Yes, please. This is a good place.
Did you mean to advance any slides here?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I did make that mistake last week, but I didn't have all of these different details down on the slide like I have when we're studying the scripture.
That's fine. I had a couple comments.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim.
I wanted just to mention that one thing I think that's important to look at is how many different kinds of careers that people have been involved in where they're trying to show the existence of God. And, you've got architects, you've got scientists, you've got physicians, you've got astrophysicists, you've got geologists, you probably have physical therapists, talking about how many different functions in the body are so linked together, and how it makes so much sense. The engineers, the computer programmers, you got people everywhere who are sharing their faith in every profession.
Yes.
Every profession is sharing their faith. And I think it's great. I think it's great. And also, You've got the idea that I think that people, if you try to stay connected with people and you care about people and you show them that you care, then at some point in their lives they'll come back to you and ask you why. Why are you being so helpful? Why do you care about me?
Absolutely.
You're the only one that cares about me.
Mm.
And so I'm thinking that there are certainly times when people have illnesses and are sick and are dying, where they're looking for answers. But there are also people looking for answers out there just struggling to make it by every day,
Absolutely.
and that are just needing help to find jobs, to have somebody care about them, have somebody that loves them. And with COVID being out there, the people have been becoming more and more isolated. So I think that one thing that you can see is that Christians are certainly, and there are a number of people that are very philanthropic and trying to help people. I'm not saying that, that there aren't people out there like that, but you'll find that often Christians and people who are involved in the sort of the emergency medical services, these are the kinds of people that are going to go into those situations, where you have doctors and nurses and engineers and people all in. I mean, you got engineers that are involved in hospitals, have to keep them running.
Absolutely.
So you got all these people are trying to work together to help people just to survive.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. And to speak to your first point there, Jim, I think there are many, many more professionals in all those fields you just mentioned, whether it's engineers, astrophysicists, scientists, and all kinds of fields in biology. I think there are many more out there who, because of the work they do in their field, are absolutely convicted that these things couldn't happen by accident, and do have faith in God. And I think there are many more of those people than we're told about. Because I think that there are those out there that want us to believe that no scientists believe in God, and that's just not true. That there are many scientists that do believe in God, who look at the evidence all around us and are led to. Now, I'm not saying that they all understand the scripture the way we do. I'm just saying that I think there are many more professionals in these fields that do believe in God than we're made aware of. Now,
Rayford,
yes,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, Mark.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, um, I would suggest that pretty much in the last half century or so, uh, well, let me just put it in these terms. Uh, Probably up until the beginning of World War II or a little before then, public schools would use something similar to something called like the McGuffrey Readers. And
Right,
that was a collection of books that, taught K through 12 education with a bend toward teaching young people that God exists, that God created the universe, and
right,
it had stories of the Bible built into those readers. Kids learned in public schools,
right,
about God. Probably in the 1950s or so, and going forward, unfortunately, and we're still paying a heavy price. Public schools went to the other extreme.
right.
I wouldn't say that the McGuffrey Readers is an extreme. It's actually the right
Yeah,
way to go. But
sure.
public schools abandoned God in their
Yeah,
curriculums and started teaching all kinds of you know false science, Darwinism, and Greek mythology and all this other kind of stuff. And what happened was that by the time you got into the 60s and 70s and you got to the university level, most of the philosophy departments and so forth were, controlled and run by people who didn't believe in God. And so young kids showing up on most college campuses in the United States, starting in the 70s and 80s, were, essentially bombarded with, anti-God, you know, philosophy of, based on, modernism, postmodernism, and all this other stuff. And so I would say that while I agree that there are, those who believe in God and all of the disciplines that we talked about, I would strongly urge anyone with children or grandchildren to recognize that kids entering public schools these days and going to our public universities are going to be bombarded with teaching and thinking and philosophy and
Absolutely.
everything else that goes against God. And they're going to, and unless, this is why training in the home is so important when it comes to training our children up in the way they should go, because they're not going to get and turn on your media or anything like that. And for the most part, you basically hear mocking God and mocking those who believe in God. And so this is why we need to be able to put forth these arguments, these points, to really show people, those who may have a willingness to listen. But for example, I can't tell you how many times when I was working in research, when I worked for a center of excellence for the VA in Decatur, Georgia, and we were working with some of the top scientific minds in the world, from Georgia Tech and places like that. And you could be reading an article on a research topic, and they would just casually throw in stuff like the Earth is 70 million years old and all that kind of stuff. Like it wouldn't even be on topic. Like it's as if like these folks live to deny God everything. And so I don't mean to take up the entire class, but I just want people to understand that the public discourse these days is hardly in favor of a situation where people are willing to learn, because the one of the main reasons is that people want to believe that they're self-sustaining, that everything depends on their own, that their bootstraps, pull, there's no morals. Everyone can do what they want. Nobody can, there's no standards to measure right and wrong. And so all of that feeds into what these folks have been doing over the past 60 years. But it's the public universities are horrible. And I'm talking the Ivy Leagues on down. And it's kind of sad, because the history of like the Ivy Leagues and stuff, most of those schools had, granted it was, false doctrine, but most of them were built around seminaries. They had seminaries, but now you're not going to get in. You go to those schools now, all you're going to hear is anti-God rhetoric.
Yes. No, I agree, and I think especially on the university level, they don't want us to hear about scientists that do believe in God, and so the media plays into that too. But you're right. I mean, on the university level, by and large, I'm sure there are exceptions, obviously, but yeah, you're not going to hear people talking about these things about the proofs of God. And again, the media is not going to give ear to those professionals that do believe that, so we largely don't hear from them. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If we're not teaching our kids these things, where are they going to learn it? Because they won't learn it in school these days. And I feel for the Christian teachers, that try to do the best they can, working within the guidelines that they're pretty much forced into. And of course, when God was removed from the schools, so was moral right. And you mentioned postmodernism, the idea that there is no right and wrong. Well, is there any wonder that we've got generations of young people that are killing each other, because they don't have the underpinning of right and wrong that comes from an understanding that there is God. He created everything, and He's given us a way to live. But I also think that there are a lot of folks out there that bought into the things that they were taught, let's say in public school, universities, that are in lives that are they're hopeless, because they're not finding any meaning, and so there are a lot of folks out there that are trying to find meaning and purpose in their lives. And of course, we need to share with them that God's word, God Himself in His word, gives people meaning. And I just hope that some of these things that are just all around us, right? Everywhere we look, there is evidence of the designer. We see God's imprint all around us, which is exactly what Paul talks about. But thank you, Brother Mark. I think you laid that out very clearly, and which is
Brother
why it's
Rayford,
so important for us to teach our children. Yes. I'm sorry.
can you hear me?
Yes. Is that Donald?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
So when I was studying at University of Phoenix, I took a course in religion because I thought it would be interesting, and I wanted to see how much of Christianity was taught. And what I discovered is the first day the instructor says, now, I'm going to do my best to try not to try to be biased. But religion is a very hard course to teach. I was like, yeah, okay. So I know what to expect now. But the schools, the way that they teach religion is inclusion. They don't want to leave any faith out because they don't want to rock any boats.
Right.
And so the curriculum is set up that way, where everything is including atheism. So,
Right.
which I was very disappointed in the class, but it was a credit that I needed, so I couldn't drop it.
Sure.
But that's what I discovered is it's inclusion, but with Christianity being pushed more to the bottom,
Right.
the belief scale.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
what
not
I wanted to say.
surprised. Yeah. I'm certainly not surprised.
Rayford,
Yes.
can I take you back to page 1?
Brother Roy? Yes, sir.
The statement, nothing comes from nothing.
Yes.
Well, then the person you're working with might ask, well, God came from nothing, right?
No. Well, I mean, that may be the question they ask, but
If
then
there is such a
I
thing as a God, where'd he come
Right.
from?
Right.
Because you say nothing came from nothing.
Right. And, I'm talking about in our closed system in our world.
So in our
And that's why
physical world, nothing came
I'm
from
sorry.
nothing. In the physical world, nothing
Yes.
came from nothing.
Yes. And then what you have to do is you look at, and you know, like the second law of thermodynamics, you have to have, there has to have been, the designer has to be outside of the laws that govern our universe in order to have created those things. And so that's, I would say, God is always, that goes to the eternal nature of God then. Um, but yeah, you know, when you say that in this argument, the idea that nothing in our world appears out of nowhere.
Right.
That's the point. But you're right. Then that may be a question is asked. And then you have to go to the point that the creator that made everything is outside of that and has always existed. So there isn't a beginning or end to God. But and understand that's another area then you might have to deal with.
Wait a
Brother
minute.
Rayford.
What did you just say? There was a beginning to God?
No,
Did
no,
you just
no.
say
I'm
that?
saying, no, what I said was that the creator that made all of this doesn't have a beginning
Right.
because he's
Right.
always existed. He's eternal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Brother
Um,
Rayford, so sometimes when individuals ask, well, where did God come from?
uh-huh.
You know, I can't remember the scripture right now, but it just talks about the awesomeness of God, that he's far more intelligent than man, and that we probably would not even understand, you know, the whole concept or process. And then what I try to do is bring people back to reality. You know, you're focusing on the wrong thing. You need to focus on your salvation, what's going to happen to you after death.
Right.
You know, there are some things that we just don't comprehend,
Sure.
even in the 2,000 plus years that man has been on this earth, and how it's taken us this long to get this far. So sometimes when people ask questions like that, you need to bring them back and says, okay, let's deal with today
Right.
and what's going to happen tomorrow.
Okay. Brother Roy, did you have any thoughts on how you would handle that with someone?
All you can say is it requires faith,
Yeah.
to believe that before there
Yeah.
was a beginning, there was God.
Yeah.
And then the person's going to ask you, well, define God for me. What do
Yes.
you mean by God?
Right.
So what do you say then? He's a spiritual being, right?
Right.
He's
That
not
is
not
out,
physical.
which is outside, he is outside of the laws that he created that make all this work.
Yeah,
Because he has to be.
he had no beginning, just
Right.
as he will have no end.
Yeah, and he's not governed by that. Let's see, Brother William has a scripture here, Psalm 90 in verse 2. Before the mountains were born, you brought forth the whole world from everlasting to everlasting, your God. And you know, certainly we want to move them to that understanding.
Brother
And
Rayford?
it takes time. You know, if you're dealing with someone who isn't sure about God, then we show them the evidence that a creator exists, and then we begin talking about his attributes, which have to be true for everything to exist. Go ahead, Brother Mark.
Yeah, I was going to say, because, we started talking about, you know, uh, we may not be able to take certain people who do not believe in God directly to a discussion of God,
Right.
but there is increasingly, this is where Apologetics Press and other resources are so good, because increasingly the science supports a very young Earth. A lot of the things like dating and all this
Right.
other stuff that people relied on as being accurate is being shown to have, all kinds of scientific issues. Some of our
Right.
initial dating models and things that that people relied on for many years. I mean, there's just so much evidence, like even things such as dinosaurs, like there's overwhelming evidence of dinosaurs and man living at the same time. You can go to Central America and find, indigenous people who were, drawing pictures of, dinosaur-like creatures and things like that. I mean, it's just all kinds of fossil evidence and things of sort of dinosaurs and man, living together.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, even before you get to, what we understand from scripture as God and his attributes, the science itself, real science, supports that there was a creator, and it
Yes.
supports a very young earth, in that, in things such as like, the great flood, the flood during Noah's day. Like
Right.
there's all kinds of evidence, that actually happened. So like archaeologists are like discovering regularly, more and more evidence,
Yes.
that supports the Bible narrative,
Yes.
which is God, which comes from God, we know. But I think, before we even get into a discussion with them about God, we can educate ourselves more about real science and what it shows
Yes.
that debunks so much stuff that people have been taught falsely in these public universities and in
Yeah.
elementary schools for the last 60, 70 years.
Mhm. Just this past weekend, I was reading an article that spells out that the more scientific evidence is found on a level that's beyond my ability to really grasp, the more they find, the more it supports the existence of God. And the same thing is true about and we're going to get into the Bible next week. The more archaeologists find, the more proof that we have that the Bible is exactly what it claims to be, the Word of God, that it is true. So yeah, all of the more science finds out, the more it points to the existence of God. Absolutely, absolutely. Let me. I want to look real quickly at these last two arguments, and then if there's a little bit of time left, we'll open it up again. And I think these are strong. If you'll notice there on page 5, the intuitive argument for the existence of God, the fact that we can conceive of a higher power or creator, that within man is the innate need to worship a higher being. Anthropologists have found that in every time and every place and people that can be researched, man has always sought a God or higher power. While forms of worship and a higher power sought varies greatly by time and place, still it is clear that we all have an inner need, an urge to see God. And of course, God put that in his creation. And then finally, there's the moral argument to be made. Again, within the heart of men and women of every age and culture, there's a sense of oughtness. Now, this oughtness can be expressed as a sense of right and wrong, and that should be inner capacity to seek what is right and wrong. I didn't type very clearly there. While the definition of right and wrong varies widely, there's this inner sense that some things are always right and other things always wrong. The conscience of man sets him apart from all the other animals, for all the animals of God's creation, because man is made in the image of God. Paul speaks to this in Romans 2:12-16. When a society attempts to remove God from its consciousness and there is no more rightness, what happens? And of course, we see what happens in the world that we live in today. So this sense of, even on the level of when they found, people who are cannibals, there's still within that community a sense of right and wrong, and so that's an extraordinary thing. That there is this sense of oughtness. Again, it's affected by society, no question about it. But the fact that it does exist is a strong proof that it exists because God, because the Creator, placed that within us. Now, when I get to the end of when I share all this with someone, Then I would definitely go to Romans 1:18-20, about that Paul says about we can see God's invisible attributes. I would go to Genesis 1. I know we haven't talked to them yet, and they may not accept that the Bible is the Word of God, and that's where we would go next. Um, the Big Bang Theory became all the rage in the mid 20th century because scientists looking at ever expanding universe realized that this all had to have some kind of beginning. Of course, with the Big Bang, they said that they just say, well, it just appeared, whatever that matter and energy was, it just came from nothing. And of course, we've just debunked that in our discussion of the fact that no, it did come from something because God created it, and that's the only thing that makes real sense. When they ask where did the Bang come from, you cannot have a universe without matter, energy, and time. And of course, I'm not saying that it was a Big Bang. What it was God created the heavens and the earth, and God said, "Let there be light," and that's how it began, and we understand that. But matter, energy, and time came from someplace. They didn't just magically appear. And all three are found in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1. In the beginning, there's time, God created, there's energy, the heavens and the earth, there's matter, and to top it all off, space. So that is my presentation that I've used with folks that's been helpful. We've got about 5 minutes. Next week, we're going to begin our next section of the practical evangelism study, how to talk to someone who's not sure they believe the Bible is the Word of God. And then we'll also deal with, okay, God exists, so how do we know He's the God of the Bible? And we'll talk about that also in our study of why we can be absolutely certain that the Bible is what it claims to be, which is the Word of God, the Creator of everything. So, looks like we've just got about a minute, but would anyone like to share any final thoughts? Any other proofs of God that we might want to share with others to help them understand that there is a God? Well, I appreciate all of the comments tonight, the questions. I think this is very helpful. But there are people that are seeking, and there is lots of evidence that we can share with them that it does take faith, as Brother Roy said, but that faith is not a blind faith, that there's so much evidence of God, of our Creator, who we absolutely believe is the God of the Bible, all around us. And I hope that this will be helpful, that some of this will be helpful to help you share with someone who's struggling with their belief in God.
Hey,
Well,
Rayford,
yes,
just have one quick thought.
yes,
I think it's incredibly important having a daughter who has turned away from the faith. It is incredibly important for us to look with an open mind
yes,
and to not, to realize that we probably don't have the whole story. We may think we do, but we probably don't.
okay,
And to be honest with you, there are so many of those basic unknowns out there that it could go either way. And it's not going to shake my faith. I'm still going to believe that there is a God and that He created this earth, no matter how old this earth is, no matter whether there is another solar system out there with life on it. None of that is going to shake my faith.
sure,
There were people living when there were dinosaurs, or there were not. That doesn't change the fact that there is a God. He sent His Son. The Son died for us. And that's how we're going to have hope of heaven. And
sure,
I think if we go in there with this is how it is and this is how it has to be, then, even as a believer, I just want to shut the door. So I think that more than knowing the facts and getting them all right and all that, I think it's more important. Yes, stand your ground on God. There is a God, and He created the earth and the things that we absolutely know. On the things that we don't have book, chapter, and verse on, we're probably going to learn a lot more about those things as the ages roll. But anyway, my thought.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I just, there are times that we need to help. And I think the way we approach folks with this information I've been sharing, it makes a lot of difference, right? That we don't go into it of, I've got all the answers. No, I'm just pointing to the evidence that we do have, that we can see all around us. And our ultimate goal is to get them into obviously a faith in God and to believing the scripture. It's just that different people are going to be in different places, and we just got to try to help them with a kind heart, and to try to help them see some of the evidence that will help them come to that, to a belief in that there must be a creator out there. Yeah.
Hey, Brother Rayford.
Yes.
I would just quickly say, that was, the purpose of my class last week. And of course, I only scratched the surface, is that, as Christians, God intends for us to have a love of the truth. God is truth. And, we should always be compassionate with anyone
Absolutely.
we're trying to teach, and
Absolutely.
and kind and patient and so forth. But we have to have a love of truth. And truth is objective. And I think one of the ways that those who are the whole range of folks out there that either are agnostics, they're not sure, or those
Right.
who outright reject God. In a lot of those instances, it's because in our world today, we've played footloose and fancy free with the ideal of truth, and that's what postmodern turns on. That we can't know truth.
Yeah.
And when you start going down that road, that might not shake our faith, but it's going to shake the faith of a whole bunch of folks. And God, I don't believe God would be pleased with a, just you got your truth, I got my truth approach to faithfulness in Him, faithfulness to Him.
Sure.
I never read anywhere in the scriptures where anyone was encouraged to say, just let people have their truth and you got your truth, and hopefully they'll develop faith somehow. Because one of the reasons why, for example, I was flipping the channels today, and this just goes to show, this is why I stopped watching local news, because we had I was flipping the channels today, and there was a panel discussion on one of the news stations, and they were talking about abortion. And we've taken something that's clear-cut murder of innocent children, and now we're using words like body autonomy. Like, body autonomy?
Yeah.
How about the unborn child? Like, you don't, like, even a fool knows once an egg and a sperm is fertilized, that's a being. And now they're saying, oh, you're attacking body autonomy. That's how this stuff, excuse me for getting, but I'm passionate about this kind of stuff, because that's where this country gets, is you can start killing millions and millions of innocent children in the womb, because people want to play footloose and fancy free with the ideal that truth is not objective, and you get to develop these weird standards just to create some kind of a movement, and call it body autonomy. Like, that's just craziness to me.
Mark, I'm so glad to hear you say that.
And I'm unapologetic about that kind of thing, because if we're not going to stand up for innocent children in the womb, then what's next?
Yeah.
And that's where This is where these public universities and so forth are taking us. And young people, you talk to the average young people now and you tell them, look, God would be against this. And they look at you like you're just old and out of step. And we got to start standing up for the truth. I'm sorry.
Sure.
You know, one of the other things I've read, this is Brother Walker. So what I found that people get very frustrated because they have questions and they feel that they want the questions answered immediately. They don't want to have to figure it out. They don't want to have to sit down and kind of think things through and look at the things that God has made around us. And then when they don't get the answers from us or someone else, you know, or the answer that they want to hear, then they start grabbing onto, you know, all crazy nonsense. So sometimes it's not us or the Christian, it's the individual not wanting to accept the truth. And, you know, God has made things very plain, but they're looking for answers and the answers don't fit their narrative sometimes. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. I noticed Brother Cheche had put on the chat Deuteronomy 29:29. Of course, these would have been the words of Moses to the Israelites when he renewed the covenant at Moab. The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may follow all the words of his law. And so there are certainly things beyond our mind that only God can grasp. And we simply deal with the things that we can understand and see all around us. But I appreciate that. Well, folks, I see we're about 10 minutes over, and I appreciate all of the discussion tonight. Again, my purpose is to help us help others that are seeking, I mean, we may at times talk to someone who is convinced there is no God and is going to try to convince us. And but if they want to talk about it, we certainly can share these things. And then, but there are many who are just struggling with their faith in God, and just hope that these things will help. And again, as we move forward into helping folks see the vast amount of evidence that the Bible is different than any book that's ever been written, and those differences point to the fact that they were that it was written, came from the mind of our Creator, a God who is above everything. Well, thank you all so much, and we'll have a closing prayer now, and then I'll turn it over to Brother Kobe. Father in heaven, we love you so much. We thank you, Lord, for all your blessings. And Father, we thank you for this time, this opportunity we have to come and discuss these things that will help us to help folks that are struggling with the belief in you and in your Son to come to that belief, Father, so that we can move them into your holy word. Father, just be with us. Help us, Father, to take advantage of the opportunities that you place before us to share your truth about you and the truth from you with those that are struggling. Lord, be with us as we go into the week ahead of us. Watch over us and take care of us. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.